Hello, and welcome back to another pen talk. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for following my Pen BBS journey. And it continues. This is one pen of two that violated my no buy pens in August goal, but I think this was worth it. New model, new color, and I felt that my viewers would like to see it. So let's take a look at it. Yes, it comes in the classic box that they've been using for a while. Very classy. It was in a plastic sleeve, but I took it out, and it's nice that they have that little elastic band there to hold the pen in place. I mean, this will protect the pen through shipping. Also, I don't know where anybody retail sells it, but if you sell it retail, it would work. So I've enlisted the help of a crab to hold the pen in its presentation format for your viewing enjoyment. Let's take a look more closely at this. So this is interesting light green with a fair amount of pearlescence in it, which provides that chatoyancy effect. You can see that converter on the inside, but it's not obvious, it's more subtle. Just like you can see the black feed. Let's see if they changed how many turns it takes to get off the cap. There's one, less than 1.5. So that is a pretty nice improvement over some of the previous models, except the 268 comes out in almost one turn. So that's interesting. You know, the section, same materials, the cap and barrel, classic Pen BBS design. That same nib, you know, the fine steel nib with the upturn on it. And when we'll see as we take it apart, you know, it's a nib assembly, and you can pull the nib and feed out without much effort. They added this metal ring here, which I'm not really certain why. I guess it's a design element. It certainly, I don't think, serves any functional need. But a lot of higher end pens have that metal band there. And when we compare it to some of the other Pen BBS models, you'll see why they may have done that. So let's look at this pen in pieces and do the comparison, and then we'll think about maybe swapping the nib and what ink we'll put in it. So here we have the 480 disassembled. I didn't take the screw out of the cap, but we'll look at that with our LED light. I also wanted to show that I could pull the nib and feed out of the nib assembly, and this nib assembly took a little bit of effort to get it unscrewed from the section. And this is supposedly a new style converter. We'll compare it to the converters I've had with my other Pen BBS pens. So one of the changes they did was they put the O-ring underneath the threads, which to me is not the right place. Most of their other pens have the O-ring above the threads, and to me this allows ink to get into the threads, and with a semi-transparent pen like that, you're going to see a lot more of that ink color show, and it should really just be limited to the barrel. So that's my 2 cents on that. You know, I think there's been some rumors that this is an improved converter, but so one of the main differences is this now has a knurled turn knob, where this one had a faceted turn knob. There's no rubber, no spring agitator in the new one, which is fine with me, because to me this makes cleaning out the converter when you change inks more challenging. And everything else appears to be the same. You got a nice little insert in there, the dimensions. So these are usable on either new or old Pen BBS models. So I've changed my lighting. I've eliminated the LEDs, and I just have filtered sunlight coming in. So this is just a nice green, certainly not a color I've seen before on Pen BBS's. And it is 107 Verdure, as I'll mention a few times. You know, that cap band is done as usual. There's your 480, and Pen BBS is lined up with the clip. It's that sword design clip, which is shown up on most of their newer models. And as you can see, there is that screw at the bottom. So the clip is pushed into that slot, and then the screw is put in to secure it. Hopefully that screw is stainless steel and won't rust or react to any type of ink. Yeah, it's a nice resin. I like it. It's green. This LED light's pretty intense, but you can see it has a subtle variation to it. Yeah, it's nice sometimes to just have a nice clean color like that. I wanted to compare the two different methods to secure a clip into this type of bullet design. This is the 349, but it has the same principle that the 480 does. There's a screw here. You can see those threads in the finial, and there's no delineation. The cap is one piece. In the 308, the cap is two pieces. There's a finial here, which is separate from the cap itself. There's a metal band that extends all around here. And in this thing, this cap unscrews, and it's just plastic threads. So from the inside of the pen, the only thing that the nib sees is all resin, all plastic. Where in here, the nib exposes that metal screw. And as we've seen in some Chinese designs, particularly the Wing Sung 3003, that screw can corrode. But I'm confident that PenBBS has used a corrosion-resistant screw in there. So here are two pens, two PenBBS pens that I will compare the 482. The first one is the 349, which came out, I'd say, over a year ago. It had a limited production run. There's still a few available on eBay, but they're quite high price, so I guess it's because of limited supply. I have two of them, and this is the green one, which I brought out because I thought that would be good comparison. And here's a 308/266 in Symphony. Again, I wanted something a little bit transparent to make this comparison with. So obviously there's three different clips used, different cap bands used, different design on the cap finial. These are all, cigar-shaped, torpedo-shaped, pointy-nosed designs. First made popular by the Schaefer balance, and that design has certainly stood the test of time as many pens mimic that design. So let's take these caps off and let's take a look at the section and nib. So posted, these pens continue to have similar lengths. All three of them post fairly well. The 349 takes a little bit more pressure, but once you get it in place, it stays in place. The 308 has always been a great posting design, and the 480 is close, but I don't think posts quite as well as the 308 did, which is a function of the shape and design of the cap and the end of the barrel. So the sections are all quite similar. I'll do close measurements of them just to ensure that the visual is accurate. And here's where we see that metal band between the section and the barrel. But in the 349, this had a metal insert in, like your sailors and platinums do, where here it's just a metal ring. Again, I think this is aesthetics. Here it was part of the design. And in the 308, there's nothing here. This is just all acrylic in the section. And this has that O-ring at the top above the threads. This one has the O-ring below the threads. So one of the main differences there is when you're screwing back on the barrel. This one, the 308 design, you get resistance right away because that O-ring engages with the barrel. Where here you just get a little bit of extra resistance in that final half turn or more. So from a tactile viewpoint, I think they made that change because a lot of people may not have been comfortable with how that barrel and section screwed back in, but to me, functionally, I think it's better above the threads. And they all have that same PenBBS fine steel nib in them. I've decided I'm not going to use the standard PenBBS nib. I got a ton of those and I've written with a ton of them. So one of my favorite nib grinders, Mike, said he has a new cursive italic. So I bought this Jinhao one from them. It's definitely wider, so we'll take a look at how it writes. I've been very impressed. I've been using a left obliquey ground for me. I have that been a 308, so we're going to compare those, but let's see how this one writes when I put it into the 480. One of the challenges with the 308 design is when you put in like a Yovo or other number 6 nib, you ran out of clearance at the top of the cap. It was tight. This nib is about 1 millimeter longer than the original Pen BBS nib, and there's still about 1 millimeter gap between the end of that nib and where that screw holds in that clip. So looks like this pen, they've definitely addressed that design, so you can put in regular nibs. So as you know, I've got rid of the, I'm calling it generic Pen BBS nib after I have probably well over 80 of them. It certainly becomes generic for me. And I like something different. I mean, I think as a writing instrument goes, this is an iconic standard. It fits well in the hand. You know, the cap comes off with a reasonably short number of turns. It feels good in the hand. Like the 308, like the Schaefer Balance, this is a classic design which will never go out of style. Posted, it still feels good in the hand. You feel the weight of that cap, but it pretty much moves the balance from this side of your hand to this side of your hand. And for me, that's not a significant change. Let's line that up so it looks better. So enough talking, let's see how the nib writes. So overall, this is the wettest nib I've ever used in a Pen BBS pen. And as you can see, the distance between the end of the feed and the nib is longer than you would normally get with a Pen BBS nib. And normally, in order to make a pen wetter, you reduce the distance between the end of the nib and the feed. In this case, whatever Mike has done with this nib, it is wet, which I enjoy. So this is the ink. I had this in my TWSBI Aurora, and I figured it'd be a good ink to put in this pen. So just to rate this pen on the design of the pen without considering the nib, I'd give it a 9.2. We're going to go through the detailed rating, but you know, I like to mix things up now and then. I mean, this is a classic. It's a writer's pen. And with this interesting nib in it, it takes on a whole new dimension. Let's look at the rating grid. So this is going to be an interesting one because the nib is not the same nib that came with the pen. From a design viewpoint, it's going to get 3 checks. Iconic design, a writer's design. Engineering, it's going to get 2 checks because I don't like the way they changed that position of the O-ring on the section. Build, it's going to get 3 checks. I mean, Pen BBS pens, I've never had any issues with their build. I mean, their manufacturing is to a very, very high tolerance, as high as any other pen that I've ever used. Writing, we're going to give it an NA because I use that replacement nib, but if you're just going to use the standard Pen BBS nib that comes with it, it gets 2 checks. Look, this pen looks great, 3 checks. And value, it's only going to get 2 checks because let's take a look at value. I'm going to compare these 2 nibs ground by Mike. The one on the left is a left oblique, which is what I commissioned him to do a custom grind for me. I gave him the angle of the oblique and he used a Jinhao medium nib to start with. The one on the right is his new cursive italic, and the grind is interesting because it's not as severe as the left oblique grind. You can see that very clearly here now in that outline. But you know, the real test, and I've looked at nibs close up, I've looked at nibs under loops, and until you actually ink it up and try to write with it, it's hard to really judge. It's one reason why I haven't gone into nib grinding, because I can't relate that visual look to the nib to how it's actually going to put ink on paper. Now we're going to compare the left oblique we looked at to the cursive italic. And the first thing is it's more feedback, and it does have, gotta learn how to spell, and it does have a very sharp edge to it. But I like that because it makes the line a lot crisper than the cursive italic. And again, I can enjoy both nibs, but if I only had to live with one, I enjoy a more crisper grind on a nib, which was quite evident, I think, when we looked at it closely under the camera. I mean, this is also a fairly wet nib. It's Robert Oster Frankly Blue in here. So that's a quick look at another grind. If you look up the difference between a 308 and a 480 for pricing with the same materials, it's about a $4 difference on Pen BBS on Etsy, which I think prices pens pretty much at the lowest price of any place you're going to find on the web. Tabao may be cheaper because that's where Pen BBS sells directly, but I've not been able to figure out a way of using it. If you go on eBay, the 480 seems to command a fairly high premium, much more than Etsy pricing that Pen BBS uses. So just keep that in mind if you're looking for this model. And you know, from a practicality writing viewpoint, if you like this design, just buy a 306 and buy it in the color that you want and save a few dollars. So thank you for watching. Hopefully you've enjoyed this look of a new model, which is, to me, not as new as some of the other ones they've released, like the 456 and the 355, because they are definitely unique pens and very, very good writing instruments with unique filling systems, so therefore they stand on their own, where this is just your standard cartridge converter, like the 308, the 267, the 323, and I really think the 323 design is more unique than this generic, you know, cigar shaped. So may you have many great, wonderful, extremely invigorating, thought-provoking writing experiences putting ink on paper. Find an instrument that you enjoy doing that with. So we've reached the end of this video. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. And we're going to say bye for now. There'll be more videos to come. I did buy one other pen in August. Enjoy your day. Enjoy your life. And bye again.